reduce cost to help you either on the tune-up, sharpen up your system, or for the intern package to get somebody up to speed. And don't forget about e-learning either. We've got an e-learning number of e-learning modules to help you get up to speed. So with that, I'll throw it over to Jenny Lee. Take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you. I'm really happy to be here talking today about training. When you said that you wanted to talk about the top 5 wow factors that we find when we're out training, it was difficult to narrow it down to 5 because people get super excited when you get out in the field and are really talking to them about things that are going to be practical and helpful for them every day. So I think I was able to do that, and I can highlight a few things for us. I know that people can ask questions and submit them to you, so feel free to interrupt me anytime if there are questions out there. So I'll go ahead and get started. I looked at this and thought about a few categories that we do in training, and so I thought I'd start with data collection. One of the tools that is our newer data collection tool is inspections. And inspections is a tool that is really designed to be something that's very easy to use, something that makes people comfortable who are on the floor entering the data, doesn't make them nervous because it's a nice, good, comfortable interface. And then something that's also easy for people to edit and revise and create on their own without a lot of customization, but yet with some flexibility to be customizable. So what I have on the screen that I'm sharing right now is a basic inspection, what it looks like. And as you can see, it looks a lot like a paper inspection form. And it's designed to be separated into categories. Very much like we normally would a form that we would use on paper. So I'll just quickly go through those sections. The top one is a traceability section, and each of those sections is called a sub-inspection. And you can see that on this particular form, what we would do is we would gather the information like the operator, the shift, the lot, all of those things that we might want to do some reporting on perhaps later or track in the system. So you can see how quickly I can go through and enter this information. Very easy to do with some drop-down lists. One of the things that I did want to point out here is that you can see this little QR code over here to the right. That means that if we wanted to, for a lot, we could use a barcode to scan it in. So not only can you use this form as a manual data entry, but you can do some device entry with it as well. So RS-232 devices, barcode readers, just like you could do with our templates. And once this page is filled out, you have a little green check mark, and you can check that. A lot of nice visual cues with inspections. You can see that if you can view color, that there are color indicators for us. I can see that I've already finished my traceability sub-inspection. Now I can go look at my pass-fail sub-inspection. So I thought I'd go through some of the different tests that you can create with an inspection. We have pass-fail. For instance, with this one, I'm going to go ahead and say that the color was not consistent on this particular product. And you'll notice that over here I have a note that pops up with a little exclamation point. We can make it in the system so that we require our operators to put in a note if something fails, if there's a real-time failure, if there's a defect, whatnot. And so I might want to say here that the color was faded on the bottom or something. Yeah, I mistype that every time. Yes?
So one thing we're working on for the next release is we're applying artificial intelligence to notes. So there's a couple of different methods that it uses to look at them. One would be, is this note similar to notes entered in the past? Mm-hmm. Another way to look at it would just be looking at the words to say, are these,
so
are these from the English language?
Not going to cut it?
So, yeah, with the newer version, it might pop up a little message saying, you might want to recheck your note. It seems to not fit the previous model notes. Okay. So that's something to look forward to, applying a little artificial intelligence to note entry.
Nice. I think that's awesome. And that is one of the things that comes up during training. People ask, how are we going to make them put in there what we want? up until now, it was trust and faith, I think.
Well, some companies offer financial incentives, like if
No.
operators are entering good notes, 90% of the time. So that's something you could run the artificial intelligence through too on your note database for the last month and say, what percentage of the notes were considered good.
Wow, that's going to be really powerful.
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah.
You get some insider information already.
I love it. I love it.
Right.
So just continuing on real quickly here, you can see when there is a failure, we can set this up so that it indicates that as well. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through each of the sections, but I want you to be aware of the types of tests you can do. I like this particular test, our countdown test. If you have some inspection that you have to do, for instance, that needs a temperature where a thermometer has to be in something for 10 seconds. It's a good way to make sure that you're complying with that. Check boxes as a signature we have in as well. The other thing that you can see in the inspection over here is that on our side panel, we have the ability to put in photos, documents. So if you have step-by-step instructions that you want to put in for an inspection, you can actually do that here. Defect lists, these are very typical things. Do I have a blister on this product? Is there a scratch? Is there flash? I can indicate any of those things here. We can look at non-conforming units. Again, we would require a note if there was a defect. And these are all driven by how you set up a standard in the system, how you set up a process. So you tell us there are 5 defects that this process can create. It'll automatically show up in the inspection if you choose that process. And over here, you can see that we have our website showing up. This is actually a live website, so you would even have the ability, if you have an intranet, for instance, where you want people to go to get the latest specs or something, you can have that link right there, and they can go live onto the internet to do that. So a lot of flexibility for that. And then finally, numeric inputs. If you're doing any kind of data entry, you can go ahead and do that here. Again, you could use a device, or you could do this manually. I have to put in one of those fancy notes. Test, it's actually a word. And I can have my control charts much as I do if I'm using templates for data entry right now. So again, a lot of flexibility in the inspection. Awesome. So that's how an inspection, what an inspection looks like. I think one of the great things about inspections is they are simple to create and simple to change. What I thought I'd show you just very, very quickly, if I get in the right one, is this is what an inspection looks like, what that inspection I just did looks like behind the scenes. And let's say that I forgot to add department in my traceability. It was something that I really meant to put in the inspection, but I forgot to do it. Adding something like traceability is as simple as clicking a few buttons. Let's say I want it to be near the top of my page. I can do that. Save and publish. And now if I run that inspection and look at traceability, voila, department's in there. So it's just that fast and just that easy to make a simple change. Now, obviously, you can do more complex things. We can use Python scripting with inspections. But to do what you normally need to do and to get up and running is a pretty fast process.
Awesome.
All right. So that's what I had for inspection. I do see that we have a question here. Someone's wondering, what do we do if we're using templates for data entry now? Can we also use inspections, and is it hard to change to using inspections? So the answer to the first question is yes, you can use inspections alongside templates. A lot of times we'll have folks who will use templates for a part of their data entry. Maybe they hadn't been doing visual inspections before, and then the inspection process is a way to introduce visual inspections. So certainly simple and easy to do that. The other thing is, if you are using templates now and you want to convert to inspections, it is something that can be done. If they're simple inspections and simple templates, it might be something you could do yourself. If you need some help with that, it's something that we can help with as well. So, anything either of you want to add on that topic? No? Okay. Alrighty. So that was inspections that I wanted to cover as far as gathering data. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was our analysis tools. We have a lot of powerful analysis tools that we can use in GainSeeker, and a lot of what happens when I'm out training is people see these reporting tools and these charting tools, and what they find is that as soon as they get into looking at the analysis side of things, they start thinking about the time they're going to save. They think about how much time they've been spending generating reports, generating charts, putting things together. And with a few clicks of a button, we can get a lot of that information right straight from GainSeeker and in a format that's easy for you to share and it looks nice. So I thought I'd demonstrate a couple of those things. The first that I have pulled up here is a Pareto chart. So if you're looking at defect information and you want to see, for instance, this is percent, each of the defects that this process has as a percent of total defects. A nice chart tells us a little bit of something, but the great power of GainSeeker and of these tools is you can always go a little further. So if I'm wondering about all of these scratches that we're seeing, I can double click on that, and then I can see here that I can actually look at that information at another level. So what if I want to know whether or not the machine makes a difference when I'm looking at scratches? I can do that. Here I have the 191 scratch incidents broken down by machine. That's telling me a little something. I always caution people at this point, this is not telling me causality necessarily. It's telling me maybe correlation. Here is something that happened and I can see it visually. The very nice thing about this is I still have my original chart in the background, but you can see that the bar that I double clicked on is red, so I can see that I drilled down onto that one. When I did that, and you might have noticed that there were still other elements and components to this that I could visualize. So I could again go down and say, well, what about shift? Does that make a difference for me? So every time I drill down, it's going to give me a little bit more information. It's also going to maintain the previous chart, and it's going to give me that nice color code. So if I look here, I've got that broken down. I look here, I know I drilled down one more, and I look here, and I know that's the end. So again, simple tool. I can put this together, and I'll show a way that we can package several graphs together to send out a report. You can email these, you can print them, you can do a lot of different things with the reports and the graphs in the system. So that's defect data, a nice simple way to look at that. Any other questions or anything?
I think we're good, but it's a good moment while you switch over to your next topic, just to remind everybody, if you have any questions at all regarding our training or something that Jenny Lee is showing us, please don't hesitate to click on the Q&A and send your question or chat. Send it to the panelist or the host, and we'll have them answered here.
Absolutely. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was charting variable data. So we looked at defect data with our Pareto chart. Typically, what we see with SPC or variable data is a lot of control charts out there. It's the first thing people ask me, how am I going to make a control chart? Well, it's very simple. So I have one pulled up, but I'm going to show you what I did to create this chart. So I'll actually close everything that I have now. To create that control chart, all I did was click on SPC charts. I chose the part number or the standard that I wanted to look at. Everything that I'm doing beyond that is just default settings in the background. I'm not really making any big decisions here. And voila, I have a control chart. So it's great. It's a simple tool. It's very fast and easy to use. Now I'm looking at this chart and I'm kind of wondering what I'm looking at. And trust me, this is test data. So no real process is looking like this on our side. If I look at this chart and just leave it, it's fine, but I can get a lot more information if I can manipulate this chart a little bit. So one of the great things that I tell people is that when you have a chart open in GainSeeker, the right click on a mouse is your friend. Because if you right click, you will almost always be able to find something else that you can do. So if I right click on this control chart, one of the first things I would probably do is I would group the data. And I would see if grouping that data by a traceability maybe gives me more information. So I can do that. I can click on traceability here. And if I say, for instance, want to look at the cavities in this particular process and see if I'm noticing any correlation with variation there, I can do that. And you can see in this particular set of test data, poor cavity 5.
Looks like there's a problem.
Looks like there could not inferring necessarily causality, but I think there's a problem with cavity 5. So you can see that was super easy for me to do. I can do it again if I want to. I can right click on this and group data here and maybe look at machine. If there's a difference there. There is a little bit of a difference in machine. And you'll notice that actually drew a new chart for me. Another thing that I can do with that right click is I can duplicate the chart that I have, and maybe I want to see a histogram of it. So I can make a new chart. I can make a new chart of the same type, just with different kind of parameters, or I can draw a completely different chart. So a lot of flexibility with our regular GainSeeker charts for variable data, especially things like our control charts. The other thing that people often want to see is what the data actually looks like behind the scenes. And so if you right-click on a chart in GainSeeker Charts, you can see the data, the actual data that's going into making that chart. So again, very, very powerful. If you have the correct permissions in the system from this type of a data table, you can edit data, delete data that you know is a mistake, that type of thing. So it's a very, very powerful tool that we use. Another piece that we use a lot with our control charts and with other graphs is trying to look at, for instance, data like this that is very, very bunched together. It's kind of losing its meaning when I look at it this way because I'm not seeing enough detail. We have the ability to do what's called brushing data, where we just draw a little box around a piece of a chart and say, give me a new one. And now I can see the detail. So when that was all one big flat line, it really wasn't telling me a lot. But when I expand that and look at the details of that, it's telling me a lot more about what the behavior is in that area of the chart. So again, a very powerful tool. And one that is super easy to use. The other charting tool that I did want to mention here, and it again is a right-click tool, is what we call our variation wizard. I'm going to go ahead and start that. The variation wizard is one that is something that we can run and will give us the ability to see what is contributing to our variation and whether or not it's statistically significant. So in this particular example, we're seeing that shift, cavity, and operator are giving us probably some influence on our variation. When I go to the next part of the variation wizard, it's telling me, here's the ranking. The thing that's giving us the most influence on our variation is cavity. And it is a significant, statistically significant excuse me, difference, and it affects both the spread and the mean. The other two, although they are contributing possibly to variation, they aren't statistically significant for us. So that's a very quick way of drilling down and seeing what, rather than trying to infer from a picture, really looking at the statistics behind something. So should we do that next or go to level 2?
Yeah, show level 2 quick.
Okay.
That's useful.
All right. So I'm going to go back here one step, and we do have another level for our variation wizard. The first one was ranked by impact, which is level 1. This is ranking by interaction. And so again with, oh, this is not a good chart to do that with. Let me get a different one.
Do it on, your original.
Yeah.
So
There we
the difference there with the impact is it's just looking at shift and the different shifts, where the interaction will say take shift 1 and then look at all the other traceability,
Right.
slice and dice it and say on shift 1 are there big sources of variation. Then it'll look at shift 2 and do the same thing, and then it'll go through all the other traceability and compare it with all the remaining traceability. So yeah, you get...
And so for on this one, when I went back to the original chart, I do get a lot of interaction. They are statistically significant. They are ranked so we can see them. And if you chart that, you can see here that we've looked at by operator, all this variance, and there's a little something going on here probably.
Cool.
Looks like we like Cameron Diaz. Is that Cameron Diaz?
I believe that is it could be. Could be. That and the characters of The Simpsons do often show up in our training.
I noticed that.
Just saying. All right, so there's one more real quick thing that I wanted to show you, and it's relatively new. We now have the ability to actually chart and graph data that comes from an external source. So I'm going to show a very, very simple example of this. You can do this through Python scripting if you want to, make it very, very robust. So we have people who actually hit against their enterprise systems, pull data from a completely different source and put them into GainSeeker just to do the charting and reporting. I'm going to show what you can do if you just have a simple Excel spreadsheet and you want to chart the data. I can highlight that, put a piece of that content onto a clipboard, and then I can go up here to do File, External Data, and right there, copy from clipboard, and there it is. So again, this is a very simple example. Super easy, though, for me to then go ahead and say, well, what corresponds with the different categories that I have in GainSeeker? And very quickly, I can do my lots and my shift and my data, have all of my headers in there just as if I had created that file to be used in GainSeeker. Say OK, and now I can chart it any way I want. And so I can make a beautiful control chart. It was that simple, and it's always that simple if you're just going in and pulling something off a clipboard. Now, the thing to remember, a couple of things, is this data is not in GainSeeker right now. If I don't ever want it to be in GainSeeker, that's fine. I can just leave it here, draw my charts, make a desktop, put it on a dashboard, whatever I want to do with it. If I do want to put it in GainSeeker, I have that ability, though. I think you'll see that if I come in here now. Right, so at the bottom now of this menu, you can see that I have the option to save. And so if I were to click on that, it's a very quick process to say, yes, I want to save it. If this is data that's truly unrelated to GainSeeker, what you'll run into when you go to save it is you won't have standards and part numbers in GainSeeker that match what you're graphing. So you'll have to do a little work to add them if you want to. But other than that, it's a pretty seamless process. So those were the things that I wanted to make sure that I covered. There are a couple of other topics we could certainly touch on, but I want to give people a chance to ask questions, or you guys a chance to wrap up.
Yeah, just to follow up on that external data, like you mentioned, I know we've got one customer pulling data from their ERP system, showing it on dashboards, plotting it all on dashboards, like on-time delivery, that sort of thing, but it's not actually stored in GainSeeker. It's just dynamically pulling it. So that's a pretty powerful way to use the external data, what we call external data function.
And not even just doing it on charts, but I'm guessing for there, doing it with dashboards and dial gauges or numbers or anything that way. We have the ability to do that, right?
They're using dials,
Yep.
And it just goes out there and re-queries and brings it up.
All right.
So we've got a lot of participants today, but they're kind of silent. The silent group. Thursday, we kind of switched the topic up on the training, but with it being the top 5 wow factors of training, I encourage you guys to drop me a line and, what would you like to see next for our e-learning module? For those that you who have used it, our e-learning currently has the foundations of SPC, intro to SPC, and intro to DMS. So those are what we have, and we're always talking about what do we want to do next, and not even just with e-learning, but you know, we continually try to evolve our training classes, and we've redesigned and have new manuals for all our training, and we're diving more into Python and how far do we go with the Python outside of GainSeeker. So if you guys have comments or suggestions or questions on any of that, please don't hesitate to let us know, and not even just now, but at any time. You know, we always welcome our customers' feedback.
Absolutely. That's how so many changes actually get made in GainSeeker, is by feedback from our customers.
I will tell you, we had one person, I won't put him out there, but I had a giggle because he said, go really far with Python. So we do have some of those that are utilizing GainSeeker and really knowing how powerful it is to use Python with it. So we'll definitely take that into consideration. You know who you are. And it's great to have Byron in the room too. So we're like, hey, can we get this? So
talk about knowing Python.
We got another said that the external data piece is very, very cool. So thank you for your comment on that. We do have a couple more minutes. I like to kind of wrap up at 2:30, but is there anything else, Jenny Lee, or experiences from training?
I would say that what I find when I'm out training, especially if it's a group of folks from one company who are getting together and maybe they've used GainSeeker for a little while, those, in my mind, are the most effective classes. So we always do training at the beginning so that people understand the product. But once you've used it for a bit of time, you know the questions you really need answered. You know the things that you really want to be able to do with the tool. And those are the classes where you start on a topic and you realize 5 people are talking amongst themselves because they're already going to the next thing because they're so excited about what you just showed them. So that's what I find. I think when I train, that people who've been using it for a little while are the people who probably really relish training and really get a lot out of it.
Awesome. I do have a quick question, and I'm going to point this one to Byron. Now, if you happen to know, Jenny, by all means. Yeah. So is there a plan to move from Python 2.7 to Python 3?
So yeah, we use IronPython, which is Microsoft's implementation of Python with embedded into GainSeeker, and we're looking at when does it make sense to jump up to the latest version. So that is something we're looking at. I'm not sure what release that will actually happen in, but it's definitely something we're looking at. And I think next month we'll probably do like an electronic signature handoff report, and that'll be done in Python. So we'll get into Python a little bit more hopefully next month.
So yeah, for those of you who do not know, we've got like the next several months of Tech Tips Live for you to register. So if you want to dig more into Python, definitely register for next month. We'll have another guest speaker.
I think Jackson might be doing that one, generating like an HTML page, letting people sign off on it, updating it, and then generating a PDF of that for final output and storage.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, and we got some great suggestions. Maybe another Tech Tips can be just some basic Python examples too, so we'll definitely keep that in mind. Since we are doing this monthly, the third Thursday at the same time of every month, put it on your Outlook calendar. So we are now officially at 2:30. I want to try to keep this at a half an hour. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, Jenny Lee. Thank you, Byron, for coming and making this beneficial to our customers.
Sure.
So, all right, everybody, get back to work.
All right. Thanks.